Hi everyone, it's Paula Edgar. Welcome back to Branding Remotely. Today we continue with part 2 of this special rewind series, a deeply personal conversation with my father, Peter L. Griffith, about the life and legacy of my mother, Joan Donna Griffith. If you haven't listened to part 1, I strongly encourage you to go back. It's where we talk about who my mother was, the vibrant, brilliant, loving woman we knew, and not just the headlines or loss. In this second part, we talk about the day we lost her, September 11, 2001, and what grief, love, and rebuilding have looked like since then. As I said in part 1, this is a conversation I plan to return to every year. But this year marks a powerful milestone. It's been 24 years since my mother was killed, and I was 24 when it happened. I've now officially lived more time without her than I did with her. And that truth is staggering for me, but it's also a reminder of how deeply she still lives within me and within all of us who are lucky enough to be loved by her. So let's continue the conversation.
Let's talk about work and what happened on September 11th. So at this point, just so you both know where we were parallel in this space, Daddy, you were working in Philadelphia, and I was living in California.
Right.
That's another podcast for another day. So tell me, how did you find out about the attacks?
So I was at work. We were in our little cubicles, and I was sorting some papers, lots of them. And I think somebody passed and said, something is going on in the World Trade Center or whatever. So I went into we had a TV room, room with a lot of computers and a TV in a corner. And I saw that one of the buildings were burning. And I went and I told my manager, I said, one of the World Trade Center buildings is burning. And I got back to my desk and I was there still doing the papers or whatever. And she called and she said that, that it looks like a plane hit the building next to her. And she said she could see the fuselage and stuff down on the ground. And there was a lot of confusion and stuff. So anyhow, she said, if I remember correctly, she just said, okay, I'll talk to you later or whatever. Yeah, something along those lines. So I was back at my desk and my niece called me and she said, Donna's building is burning. I said, no, it's the other building. And she said, no, I'm on the roof of the building that I worked in, because she worked uptown. So she was looking downtown and she saw that both buildings were burning. So Donna called me back. No, wait a minute. I might be wrong here. She called me back and she told me that there were people, the building was burning and she could see people jumping out the building. And I said, get out. And that was the last I heard from her. Obviously, I don't know how far she got before the other plane hit the building. I don't like to think about what possibly could have happened to her, because that doesn't help me in any way. But I just know that when they said the building fell, I knew she couldn't make it down. I mean, she was on the 97th floor, and getting from the 97th floor, there's no way she could have gotten anywhere close to 40th floor by the time that that plane hit. And I think it might have hit below the 97th floor. So that was it. And I just started crying. I was sitting at my desk and I was crying, and I was still sorting papers. I was kind of like in shock. I was still sorting papers, and my manager and her manager came over, and they basically got me up and told me to go home. And they got one of the other co-workers there, a guy named George, and told him to go with me. They gave him a cab slip, and he drove me, and he came home with me. I mean, me and this guy was not the biggest buddy, but here he is across from me, and I'm dying inside. And I'm coming down 95 in Philadelphia. And I remember going on to the Betsy Ross Bridge, and there's a oil refinery there, and you can see the gas coming out of the top of the flame coming out the gas. And I remember that vividly. And I remember getting home. He asked me if I was going to be okay. And I said, yeah. And I went inside and the phone rang and the person says, Joan there. And I was like, she's at work. And the person says, oh my God, it was our lawyer. We had an appointment that night to sign our wills. And I think I came in and I started cleaning because I was in so much shock. I mean, I was just, I knew she was dead. I mean, I knew she was gone. I could just feel it. And it was like, I guess the beginning of the shock of knowing that, we had just come back 5 days earlier from a cruise for our 20th anniversary. And she was so happy because she went with her sister and the two of them, like two peas in a pod, and they had a great time, her sister and her husband, and we had a great time and everything. And here we were now. And it was funny, the night before September the 11th, I remember it was a Monday or Tuesday. She came, I think she was home, and she got up and she put on some clothes and she went over to a friend of ours' house, a friend of mine named Ava. And she went over there, and Ava told me later, it was very strange because she never did this before, but she was like in her bedroom on her water bed and stuff, and she was just having a good time or whatever. And then she came home and, we went to sleep, and I don't remember if I was up the next morning to see her off because by then I was working in Philadelphia and I didn't have to leave home as early as she did. So I don't remember whether I saw her that morning or we just say bye and kissed or what. I don't remember any of that, but all I know is she was gone.
I just realized like this is the first time that I've heard the breadth of that story from you. Like, I mean, obviously I know the pieces of it. But yeah. So on the flip side, 3,000 miles away, I was in California, and at this point I was living with an ex-boyfriend who definitely shall not be named. And we had gotten a big screen 60-inch TV the weekend before. So September 11th was a Tuesday, and we got that big screen TV. And so it was, 6 in the morning, and he came into the room and said, the World Trade Center just got hit by it. And what was wild about the footage was that it wasn't at all tempered. They were showing, you could see people jumping. Like it was just cameras on the buildings, and you could hear the broadcasters just in shock as they were reporting, and seeing these things. And then I remember calling that 800 number, that same number that had and the lines were down. You could not. I was able to get through to you once, and when I talked to you, and it was brief, you were crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna call mommy. Like, I was just in my mind, I was like, all right, good. Well, this sucks, but I'm sure she's fine. Like, I was again that shock of it all, and I kept calling, and I kept calling, and I kept calling, and I kept calling, and I went to work. Like, I was home when that happened, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go work. I get to work, and I remember sitting at my table or my cubicle, like similar to what you were saying, and just doing whatever I was doing on the computer. But then I would keep calling the number. I would keep calling the number as if she was going to answer. Mm-hmm. And then when the towers went down, people kept coming. I mean, and I'll give a shout out here for two people. For the company I worked at was Sage Software, which is Sage. I didn't have a lot of family. I didn't have family there in California, but I had friends, and they made sure. They were like, go home. And I was like, I can't go home, because at this point I was with this guy who I didn't really like. I didn't really want to be with him anymore, but I was stubborn. Anyways, long story. So going home was not going to be helpful to me. Mm-hmm. So being there at work, I mean, my friends, they brought me food. Like, it was just, I felt well taken care of in this horrific time. And it was 2 weeks or something like that before I was able to travel, because, they stopped flight, like, you couldn't fly. And I was not trying to be on a train across country, because everybody was scared about everything at that point. We didn't know what was going to happen next. And then thankfully, when the lines got down, I was able to call and speak to you and Joanne. And obviously at that point, my sister, she was 16 and in high school. And so kind of our whole world flipped upside down. And I don't want to let it go without saying who that lawyer was, who you were going to meet with, because she was such an instrumental part of us being okay. And I think really a catalyst for me thinking of even about being a lawyer. And so shout out always to Angela Titus, who is one of the best estate attorneys, wonderful people who I've ever met, and is truly the embodiment of what you call counselor as opposed to just lawyer. And having her to be able to have us help us navigate the whole process of not just the will, but also dealing with the compensation fund and all of that process. I don't know how we would have been able to really do it without having someone like her in that.
Well, let me stop you there. Okay. I was paralyzed. Losing someone who you are tied to very tightly, because even at year 20, we were still very much in love with each other. And losing her, it was like I was dead. And I say that Peter died in the World Trade Center with her. I was just numb. I mean, I think I was numb for quite a long time. And this is where giving you the education that you got and the values and the understanding about family and stuff like that became very important, because what I could not do, and I couldn't do a lot, and I will admit that I was just numb. I would be at meetings and I would have no idea what's going on. And you were instrumental in holding my hand. And I said, what would I have done without you? What would I have done if I didn't have a daughter who was able to come and say, okay, Daddy, this is what's going to happen. Here's what this. And the thing about it is, I realized there's a lot of stuff that I never knew happened because people kept things from me. And I was glad that they did, because I was just not capable of doing anything. I was just so numb for such a long time. And you say a shout out to Angela, but my niece, baby.
Oh, yes. Of course.
I mean,
of course.
If not for her, I don't know what would happen to me, which is why I love her so dearly, because she made sure I was okay. She held my hand for a long time, because she had moved up here to stay with us, I think a couple of years before. And if she was not here, I don't know what would have happened. I mean, I probably would have scraped through, but not the way I did, because she was so instrumental in making sure I was okay. And you were great in handling the stuff. And I realized that you had a lot of grief just like I did, but you did something with your grief. You turned it into activism in terms of for our family. And I don't know how you dealt with a lot of the stuff externally, but I know that you threw yourself into taking care of me and making sure our family was okay. And it was a testament to, like I said, who you were and who you would become, that you were so strong when I was so weak, and I was so weak. It was a bad, bad time. But
yeah, we, when people say that that mourning is not a straight line, mourning takes on all, now 22 years later, I still miss my mother. Like it doesn't go away. It just, it happens in different waves, et cetera. But what I remember about that time and thinking about Baby is what we call her, but her name is Dina Codrington, and that's my cousin, his niece, but she's they're similar in age. Long story. That's for chapter 17 of the novel. But she's very much someone who takes care of people. That's one of the things that I love the most about her. That if you are sick, she will make sure that you feel better. If you are hungry, you will never be hungry. And she is such a special person, and it's why and mommy loved her, right? And they loved each other. And so when I think about that time, you were not when I think about daddy, like it's kind of almost like you're like this, like over there kind of person who I loved, but very much deified. Like it's kind of like I am the epitome of daddy's girl. Like that's, we were down from the beginning. When I flew back, when I finally was able to fly back, and again, the company I work for, they paid for my flight. I flew back, and I remember the pilot saying, for those of you who are from New York, welcome home. And I like burst into tears. And by the time I got off the plane, I was like, I'm not going to cry anymore. I cannot cry. I'm not going to do it. Right. But I didn't tell you I was coming because I didn't want you to be scared that I was going to be in a plane. And when I got there, you were in the hospital because you had a panic attack. And a really good friend of mine, James, who again I had met in California, he picked me up from the airport, drove me home. And when I got home, baby was like, he's in the hospital. And I came to the hospital. I remember walking into the hospital behind a curtain, and I came out of the curtain, and we just both collapsed into each other crying. And although I knew what was real at that point, it was really real then. Like it was like, oh my gosh, she's gone. And while we understood, extended family didn't necessarily have that same realization, right? We had, my aunts that suffered from Florida, had come to New York to search for mommy. At that point, there were a lot of people who, were in hospital, like folks found people, and, there were missing signs and all that. We had our family really coalesced to support each other at that time. But I think we both had the realization that she was gone.
Yes. I think, I mean, I definitely knew, but grief is an interesting thing, and you can't tell people how to grieve. And you went different places looking, but I knew she was gone.
And one of the things, as you mentioned, you had celebrated your 20th anniversary the week before, and there's two things that I remember about that trip. One is that I finally had like a little bit of money because I had a job. And so I was like, I'm going to do something nice for them.
Oh my God.
And so that, you were on a cruise, and I had called to get balloons and a bottle of champagne and a cake.
Yes.
And
there was a sign that says happy anniversary in the room we went there too. I still have that.
Yeah.
I still have that. That was, you didn't know how proud mommy was of you. I mean, oh my God. It was like, Paula, she was just,
it was something she would have done.
Yes.
And so I remember thinking I'm gonna do something grown, like and
as much money as she was giving you, I'm sure she was surprised. She was surprised that you had enough money to do that, but she was very happy with that.
Yes. So right before then, so I had come to Jersey. I'd seen you both in August of that year because I'd come from California because I was going to go to Caravana in Toronto. And I'm glad I had taken the trip because I had the opportunity to spend some time with mommy in August, and we had gone shopping. And it was one of the things that mommy and I used to do where she was like, don't tell daddy we did this. But we had gone to, oh gosh, and I'm going to forget the name of the department store, but she'd opened a card so we can get a discount. But we bought a bunch of clothes, and I had come there essentially with like 2 empty suitcases, and they were full and actually bought a suitcase. And when I went to Caravana, I had all this stuff because she had bought me this stuff. And that was not the first time she had done that. And thinking about having that chance to spend time with her, just she and I, before this all happened and before your anniversary, was something special that I remember. But one thing that was very different about that trip was that you'd gone on trips before. You'd always vacation and done stuff, but it was never something where she would say like, here's where we're staying, and here's the hotel or what the flight. She said, she wrote, and I have this paper still, she wrote down the financial planner, that Angela, the lawyer who I talked about, she wrote all that information down on a piece of paper and gave it to me. And, reflecting back to think about like, I needed that information because you were a mess.
Yeah.
And I was able to act on the information she'd given me, which she had never done before. And it's almost like the universe, right? Like God, like whatever deity is there, understood that had to happen in order for us to be, and I say, okay, with quotation marks, because we're still not okay, right? Like we're still impacted by mommy being gone, but that it would have been so much more challenging if she hadn't. It was like that last piece of love to say, here's what you need to take care of this. Because
right. So let me say this to you. I don't know whether it was a holdover from the first bombing of the World Trade Center or what it was, but we talked about the fact that one of us was going to leave the other. We talked about, we knew that something was going to happen. I mean, we just feared, and I wouldn't even say feared. We just knew something was going to happen. And a couple of months before that, that's when she went and got the lawyer and started working on the will. That's when we had gotten the financial advisor. It's like all these things are being put in place. Was it just something was done? No, this is something that she said we needed to do because this was important. And we went to the financial advisor, and then the financial advisor told us, because she makes a hell of a lot more money than you, we need to put more insurance on her. So when she died, we had that money because she had set out to make sure that we would be okay if something happened to her. And, it's come like, I knew something was, she would come home late at night by private car from New York when she worked late. And I always disliked that, because I find myself at the window looking out for her whenever a car passes, something like that, because I was fearful that something was going to happen to her. And I didn't think that it was going to be like this, but, God in his infinite wisdom makes decisions that we don't have really the right to ask why. We just deal with it. I always say that if I complain about the fact that mommy was gone and she was taken, I would be doing a disservice to the 20 years that God gave me with her, because those 20 years was so wonderful. I mean, I had a really great life, really great. One child was gone, never to come home. And and I had one that I was working on, but that was a bit challenging. You started saying to yourself, I don't think this one is ever going to leave home. But we were happy. We were so happy. It was like, I'm not going to say perfect, because we still had a lot of debt from sending you off to college, but we lived well. I mean, we didn't want for stuff. If we needed something, we got it. We did well. And it was just sad that was how it turned out. But, like I said, I'm thankful for the 20 years, and I'm thankful for what she brought to my life. One of the things I want to say also is that part of being married, because I was an only child for most of my life. My father had kids. My mother had a child before me. Part of my life was I was alone, so I was very selfish. I mean, everything was Peter. And when I got married, things were rough the first year or two, until I made a decision that this is what I wanted. And I gave up being Peter and became part of Peter and Donna. And when that died, and I say that because that partnership died in the World Trade Center. And then I had to find myself again. And that was difficult, because you don't realize how much you give to a relationship until you don't even know what size shoe you wear. You don't know what, because you share memories and you share information. So she knew what size I was, all these things, and now I have to relearn all these things because she's not there. My rudder was not there, because she was the CEO of this house. I was the owner of the company. So she would come to me and she would say, we doing so and so. And I would say, okay, because I knew that she was better at managing stuff than I was. Yeah. So if she had an idea, we would talk about it and we would go with that. And I lost all of that. And then I had to try to build my life back. And I mean, it was like starting to walk, walking on your knees before you can get up and try to just be. And I made lots of mistakes, and I don't regret the mistakes I made, because they're part and parcel of who I am right now. But I am like that person, but I'm not that person.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stuff and talk about crying. I mean, you hear people talk about wailing, and I the crying, the amount of crying that I did would hurt my head. I mean, because I cried so I couldn't believe that she was gone. I mean, I knew she was gone, but the pain of it, just, and then there was the memorial.
Yeah.
We decided that we needed to have a memorial. This was like in October, because there was no thought of her being found in a hospital someplace else. So we needed to have some closure on the agony that we were going through. So we set up a memorial, and it was in the church. I used to go to Second Baptist Church in Morristown, and it was amazing. Sonia held my hand as we walked in.
Sonia,
Sonia. That's one of my cousins, and the place was filled with co-workers, and it just filled. The church was filled with people to the point where there were people in the choir loft.
There was overflow. People outside.
Yes, there were like the CEO of my division. I mean, there was a lot of people in. It was just an amazing showing of people, and people came from all over because she was very loved, and it was. I mean, we have it on tape, but the sound is very bad. There's almost no sound. And I really wish that there was some way to be able to get that sound back. But I can remember you singing, "Just a spoonful of sugar could make the medicine go down." Yeah. You don't know how proud I am of you. You don't know. It's like there was a part I was looking at the other day. You holding Vicky's hand as she went up to read. I mean, the memories,
Yeah, I remember that day. I remember leading up to that day because I had to really be who she trained me to be in those times, because I had to lead. And the one thing that is hard about being a leader, and I feel like I've always been a leader, but to be a leader in a space that I wasn't prepared to lead for, or I shouldn't say that, because I was prepared for it. I didn't want to, but I knew I had to.
Yes.
It was us going to pick out the flowers at the florist, and you saying you had to get sunflowers. And I remember sitting there being like, I don't know what flowers she would want. Like Daddy has to know what flowers she wants, because I don't know what flowers she would want. And little things. And I remember, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but months after 9/11, I don't know, might have been a year, they found her purse. They found my mother's purse, and we had to go into Lower Manhattan.
Oh my God.
The One Police Plaza.
No, but the municipal building.
Whatever. I remember going downstairs. So yes, it was by okay, yes, I know what you're talking about. But we had to go downstairs, and it was like this, it was like we were in a movie, like this dank place. You had to go to this window and to give this number, because every victim of 9/11 had a number.
Yeah.
And then they gave us a purse, and it was waterlogged.
Right, but wait a minute before that.
Yeah.
So we get there, and they don't want to give it to us because of something they had, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do. And I started having a breakdown right there. And the guy gave us the purse. Yeah. And anyhow, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I forgot about that part, but I also remembered it wasn't just your breakdown, because I remembered I was like, you don't really want us to have to come back here. Like I was like, you're not going to do that. But it was one of the times where I remember feeling like, I hate that she has been minimized to just being a number. I hate that we have to go through the bureaucracy of her being a victim, as opposed to me being like, are you kidding me? This is my mother. Give me her purse. Anyway, we got the purse, and it's waterlogged. And then we took it home, and we went through it. And she had your high school ring in the purse. And I just remember thinking, She had your high school ring. Like she loved you. You know, like it's one thing to know it, right? And it's another thing to have like reminders of just how much she loved us all.
Yes.
And, you know, people throughout these years have asked a lot of times, like, you know, did they find her? And, you know, and yes, we were able to have another memorial because, you know, they found remains. But I never, in all of that time, people will be like, oh, is it hard for you to go down there? I never thought of her being there. It was like when I go down to the memorial, I think because I study museum anthropology, I think it's a beautiful memorial. They did a fantastic job of capturing the you know, imprints of the building with, you know, and anybody who hasn't been there, I really do think that folks should go there. It is, I think, one of the best memorials that has been done. But I don't think of my mother as
yes. Yes. You know, so I've come into Manhattan through the tunnel. Mm-hmm. And when you're coming up one of the streets, mm-hmm. and I remember one day I looked up and I was shocked because the building wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Because usually you can't see past because, and I was like, and like you said, I don't think about her as being there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but it's just like, it doesn't affect me like that because this is, I mean, okay, it's very nice and everything, but mommy's not here. Mommy is not here. Mommy is here. Mm-hmm. And it's like I guess it's the relationship that we have with her. And it's like, mommy is always here, you know, so she's not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, it's such it was very nice to see all that, but I really don't care about that stuff. That stuff means absolutely nothing to me. So I could go down there and see her name and it's like, but I mean, it's like one day I went down there and I went with a friend of mine and she took a candle and stuff to light. It's like, what? You know, this is not what Peter does. This is not how we are. I am looking at this place as a historical thing. I'm not looking at this as a burial ground for my wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for me, it's like, okay, you know, I can go there and walk around it and, you know, like not a big deal. It's so funny too, because there's a place that I go to take pictures of birds. And as I'm coming back from there, I think it's Abscon or something is the name of the place. They have a piece of metal from the World Trade Center, big piece of bent metal as a memorial, you know, and I see this and it's like, yeah, okay. You know, like, okay. Yeah.
It's the interesting piece about having lost a family member in the World Trade Center is that it is not as if, you know, she was hit by a car, right?
Yeah.
That we have our personal connection to her and having lost her, but it is a very public,
oh my God,
shared experience we experience, not as just having lost our mother, our wife, our family member, but also as Americans, right? Yes. As New Yorkers, as we on multiple levels we experience grief. And that I think was the hardest piece for me is like, it's not a private thing that we can just manage on our own. People were always in it with us. And it was very frustrating to have to show up for other people in that space.
So one of the things that the public grieving, and I mean, I went back to work and I spent many days at my desk crying because the grief doesn't just hit you and move. It comes at you. I went to Best Buy one time and I was watching, they had football games on the thing and I started looking at it and I started crying. You know, you don't know when the tears are going to start coming. You don't know when the overwhelming feeling is going to be on you. After she died, I would go outside for a walk and I would walk like maybe 2 houses down and walk back crying, just crying up and down the street because I couldn't just sit down in the house anymore and cry. And people in the neighborhood, they knew what had happened to me. And there was nothing they could do. I mean, there were people who, you know, there was this guy at work who came to me one time and says, you know, he said, you know, if you ever want to talk or go to lunch or something, you know, and I was very taken aback. I was like, why you want to take me out to lunch? I don't know. I don't really know you. But years later, I could appreciate the fact that he just wanted to be, he wanted to help me get through the stuff that I went through. And it was so incredibly public. Everybody knew. Everybody on the job knew what had happened. Yeah. So they would see me and I could see it. And I wrote about this in something that I wrote a long time ago. It's like, everybody is thankful it's not them. You know, and I don't ask myself why me, because a better question is why not me? You know, why not my wife? And I know everybody is saying, you know, I feel sorry for him, but damn, you know, thank God it's not my wife or my husband or whatever. And I have to deal with that. I have to deal with people trying to be nice to me when I really don't want people to be nice. I don't want you to touch me. I don't want anything. I just want to be. I remember in church sitting down and this lady put a hand on me and I could just hear Donna saying, just let her put her hand on you and just, you know, because I was to the point where it was like, you know, I could feel the calm come over. It's like, I know exactly what you would say to me. So let me just, because everybody was so awful. The people at the church were unbelievable. You know, they just wanted to be there for me to make sure I was okay. It was just incredible. One little anecdote. Joanne's school, she was going to a Christian school, and the principal and his wife came over, and we were there, and you know, they met you and whatever, and the principal said, "You look so much like your mother to you." You know, the thing is, it's like people don't know what to say, or you know, and it's like you just, you know, we laughed about it afterwards, but it was like, people are so. I mean, it was such a time in this country where we've never seen a time like that. And I think things have gotten considerably worse since then. Yeah. But everybody was focused on healing the people who were hurt. And it was wonderful. It was also painful to have people know that you're hurting.
Yeah, you know, and listening to what you were just saying about people pitying, right, and feeling sad, sorry for you. I specifically pushed back against that. Like, you know, to your point about like how lucky we were to have her for that amount of time. I never felt like, yes, it sucked that she was gone, right? Like that is undisputable. Yeah. But in my mind, I'm like, you could have 100 years with somebody else and it never be the quality, the value, the love that we had in the 20 years we had. So when people say like they were like, you know, I'm so sorry, I kind of like bristled because I was like, yes, I honor the fact that you were trying to connect, right? But that don't feel sorry for me because I had the most amazing mother.
Yes, you will never, you know, you will never know the kind of love that we had. Yeah. So, and I mean, I tell people this is like, you just don't understand. And you know, people talk about mommy. And I don't get to talk about her a lot now, obviously, because it's over 20 years and a lot of people don't ask me about her. But when I tell people about her, I had to be very careful because I started to hear myself and I was like, wait a minute, am I talking about a real person here? Because if you hear people talk about her and it's like, who was this lady? You know, who was this lady? I mean, she was just incredible. And you don't know whether they actually believe you or they think, well, you know, they just full of it because their mother's gone and they're trying to, you know, but she was just an incredible human being.
Whether or not they believe it or not, mommy was everything. Last year when I read names at the September 11th memorial at the Ground Zero, and I wore a shirt that said my mom was everything. And I remember talking to somebody after I got off of the dais and she was like, oh, you know, that's such a beautiful shirt. And I was like, you have no idea. This is like, I love a statement t-shirt. Like I wear statement t-shirts all the time, but it was like, you cannot understand how fantastic she was. And I'm sure people say that about their mother. And it's true, right? It's everybody's true. But I've never heard anybody say a bad word about her. And again, truly, no one's probably going to say a bad thing about her to me. But in that sense, still, in all of the different circles and spheres that she was in, people only said just how wonderful she was. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you, and one of the reasons why it's been so I've taken it upon as like my sort of like keeping her legacy alive is something that is very, very important to me.
Yeah.
And for all of you who are listening, there is a page on my website, paulaedgar.com, and it says, when you go to About Me, there's a place that it talks about my mother, Joan Donna Griffith. And I encourage you all to go there to learn more about who she was. But this conversation is going to give you more than that page will. And it's really why I wanted to have it, because you're hearing her impact. Mm-hmm. And I have a question here about her legacy, but I'm like, I don't have to ask that question because you are hearing her legacy.
Yes.
And in her spouse, in her children, in her grandchildren, in her extended family.
Yes. You talk about the nieces and nephews. I mean, it's a big, her legacy is in each and every one of them. Mm-hmm. She was just incredible.
Yeah.
There's still a huge hole in this family that can never be filled. But I must tell you that the position that you're in as being one of the leaders of this family, being my consigliere, this is the reason why you educate your kids and you pour into them. This is the reason why my mother was a maid, so that I could be, so that you could be, so that TJ could be, so that Austin could be, so that Joanne could be, so that Kaden could be, so that there's a foundation. So when you step on stage, you are not going alone because mommy is there with you. My mother's there with you. Grandpa's there with you. Your old buddy from the White Castle days. The people who are going to remain nameless in my family. Those people are all there. And the future is bright because of mommy. The future is bright because of the love that we shared. And when I say shared, I'm just including this, we went on vacations and took 2 other kids with us. Mm-hmm. Lee and Vicky always went on vacation with us because that was who she was. She wanted the people to experience things that she did. And I think it was all for the good.
Yes. I often, when I'm speaking to audiences, is I will share something that she said to me a few times, which was, I had the choice. You could be the wind or you could be the leaf. Mm-hmm. And that was, how are you going to shape where you're going to be? And she was such an important part of who I am. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you know me, you know her. Because so much of who I am is because of who she was. And to kind of pull the circle and close it, in taking my child to college at Spelman, yay, they had a closing ceremony where you are supposed to give your kids to the school and trust them. And it was something that the priest or the pastor who was speaking, she said that this moment is something your ancestors have dreamed of. And I burst into tears because I think of all the people you just mentioned, but I specifically thought about this child who I named after myself and my mother. She is a culmination of who we were and what we poured into. And so you all know who my mother is because you have heard about the story and the things and how she added value. But you will continue to know who she is because we will continue to pour the values and the lessons and the fun that she made sure to prioritize into subsequent generations. Yes. And they will watch this and they will listen and they will hear and know about these things because it is important to remember that the victims in September 11th were not numbers. They were not. It was not a fraction, 1 out of 3,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in particular, and I could not be me without speaking to the fact that not just that they were people, but that raising up the fact that they were Black people in those that were victims, and they were Black executives who were also killed, like my mother, and it's important to know that that they existed and who they were, and that they were not just a number. When we think about it on that day, it's not just a day off or a day of service; it's a day of remembering exactly what the world lost, but what the world had. And so, Daddy, I'm so happy that we had a chance to have this conversation. And you know that I always say that I'm a chip off the old block, and I love you very much, and I'm so happy that we were able to talk about mommy. And for all of you who are listening, remember to go and look on the website to learn a little bit more about mommy, to share this with other people who you think would be helpful to hear about her and her legacy and her impact. And that's all. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Love you.
Thank you for listening to part 2 of this Branding Room Only Rewind series with my dad. There are no perfect words to wrap up something this personal, but I hope what you heard today helps you understand not just the tragedy of September 11th, but the legacy of one incredible woman who lived, loved, and led with everything she had. My mother, Joan Donna Griffith, was more than a victim. She was a mother, a wife, a sister, a mentor, and a powerful force who poured into others every day of her life. As we reflect on September 11th this year, and every year, I ask that you not just remember the loss, but also the lives. To learn more about my mother, Joan Donna Griffith, and her legacy, please visit paulaedgar.com and click on the About section. Share this episode with someone who needs to be reminded about the power of love, leadership, and legacy. And if you found this episode meaningful, and I hope that you did, I'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review this podcast at ratethispodcast.com/branding. Again, ratethispodcast.com/branding. It helps others to find the podcast, and it means a lot to me. Until next time, take care and stand by your brand. Bye, y'all.